Hi, on this video I'm going to show you guys how to calculate the area of right triangles. So we've already worked on how to do the area of rectangles. Now we're going to work on the area of right triangles. It's the next skill up from that. So in our example, we're going to be working with a triangle, a right triangle. And a right triangle is marked with a little box in the corner. And some of you guys have already learned this. When it's a right triangle, it means that this angle is 90 degrees. And 90 degrees is one of our special measurements because anytime you have a square or a rectangle, all these corners on a square or a rectangle are going to be 90 degrees. And we see these everywhere we look. They're on the corners of our doors, the corner of our tables, the corner of our walls, the corner of our windows. It's always this special 90-degree angle. So a right triangle is any time that you have a triangle and one of those angles is 90 degrees. So when we're going to calculate the area of a right triangle, what we're trying to do is figure out how many squares would be inside that triangle. Now if you're looking at it, you might see that we have a little bit of a problem trying to figure that out. And that problem is that along this line, we don't have full squares. So if you look at this, we've got a little bit of a square here, a little bit of a square there, a little tiny part of a square, a little part of a square. So how would we count those? How do you count those if it's not a complete square? Do you count it as a whole square, or do you skip it if it's small? Do you just cut them in half? What do you do with those little partial squares? So to figure out our area, what we're going to do is kind of look at this problem in a different way. Now, we've been working on the area of rectangles and squares, so we already know how to calculate the area of a rectangle. So when we are going to calculate the area of a triangle, we're going to use what we know there. The area of a rectangle is length times width equals area. That's for a rectangle. Now we have a triangle, but let's use our imaginations here. What would happen if we just went ahead and extended and made a pretend extra edge onto our triangle? Okay? If you see that, we have now turned our triangle into a rectangle. Okay? So we know if we wanted to calculate the area of this rectangle, we could use our length times width equals area. And some of you might be able to see already, just by looking at it, that it sure does look like this triangle is about the same size and shape as this other triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our length times width to figure out this whole area. And then we're going to look at this little dividing line. I'm going to say each triangle is half of that whole area. Or if you divide this whole area by 2, you're going to get the area of the smaller triangle. Now, if you're not sure that that matches up, you can do a practice test where what you would do is get a piece of paper, cut it in half from corner to corner, and see if those two triangles would match up evenly with each other. And what you're going to find out is that when you cut a rectangle in half from corner to corner, you can match those up perfectly to see that each one is half of the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our length times width to calculate our area, and then we're going to divide it by 2 to get the area of our triangle. So let's give it a try with our example. So our example is going to give us kind of a big rectangle. Our example is giving us a rectangle that is 40 by 30. So we've got 40 here and 30 there. Now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and pretend like we're actually going to measure a rectangle. And we're going to use our length times width to calculate that whole area of the big rectangle. So in this case, we've got 40 times 30 equals A. When we do our math on that, 40 times 30 equals, we got 12 and 2 zeros, so we're going to have 1,200. So our whole big area here would be 1,200. But we only want to use half of that. So when you take a whole and you want to get half of it, you divide it by 2. So we're going to cut this rectangle in half, divide by 2. So we're going to take our 1,200 and we're going to divide by 2, which gives us 600. So that means we'd have 600 on this triangle and 600 on that triangle. So now we figured out how to calculate all those little squares and half squares and quarter squares that are inside that triangle. So the way we finally put that all the way into words so you guys can know what the formula is we were going to do, what did we do here? We went length times width for the area of the rectangle, and then we divided that answer by 2. So for our area of our right triangle, what we're going to be doing is length times width divided by 2 gives us the area of a triangle. So I'll write that up here so you guys can see it as the last thing you see on this video. It's also written down on the activity so you know what formulas to use. So the area of a right triangle, we have length times width divided by 2 gives us the area of a triangle. If you have any questions, let me know.